Is this going to be a challenge? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking up the Buckeyes as we do each and every Wednesday night here at 9 o'clock Eastern time with the best panel on Ohio State football I can imagine. This is as good as it gets. I can't imagine that we're not going to have droves of people coming in. We just need to get the word out, people. So if you watch us on a regular basis on a Wednesday nights, bring more with you as we hear each and every week from Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts. We've got Tony Gerdeman on the line, as usual, from the Ozone, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, and Buckeye Claire Crawford as well. Everyone, how are you doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Doing well. Good to see everyone, and I appreciate everyone making time out of your week. I know that, Ohio State football is front and center, and it flows through the veins and it's your job and all of that. But then you, again, I'm sure at times, and maybe I'm talking blasphemy for many of you people watching, I'm sure they get sick of it once in a while. And then they still come on here and talk more of it for us each and every week. And this is an important week because, maybe historically looking at the two schools football programs, it wouldn't necessarily be a challenge most years. But we can expect a pretty good football game, I believe, on Saturday, ABC, noon Eastern at the Shoe. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, definitely. And I think people were surprised by the line opening up at like 17.5 or something like that, or maybe even larger. But, yeah, this is going to be what I'm looking forward to seeing is stuff that we didn't get to see last week, how much of last week was held back, how vanilla was the offense, was the defense. I know Luke Fickell is expecting some different things from Ohio State that they didn't show last week. So I am looking forward to seeing a fully operational Ohio State. And I know the players are intent on not letting up and not starting out well and just coasting from there. So that will be interesting to see if they can even mount that kind of start or, get off to a good start and then keep the pedal down. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing like I said, a fully operational team. Players today, Coach Larry Johnson talked yesterday about how Cincinnati is a Big Ten team in talent, demeanor, style. And so, this should be pretty rough, pretty hard fought. They know that Cincinnati is going to come into Columbus fighting. I know Luke Fickell is trying to downplay it, but I don't know how you can.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tony. I took a few moments today and popped in the DVR of the UCLA and Cincinnati game, and it's hard to come away and not be impressed with what Cincinnati was able to do in that victory. They play very physical brand of football. Everybody, Larry Johnson, I think Ryan Day, and a lot of the coaches from Ohio State have already likened them to being like a Big Ten caliber opponent. And I think that's true both in physicality and also in how good this team is. I think if you put them in the Big Ten right now, they'd be threatening Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, Northwestern, to be middle of the pack in that part, maybe even better than that. I know they're 27th in the coaches poll and 28th in the AP poll this week. So they're just on the verge of being ranked. And obviously if they lose to Ohio State, they'll fall back a little bit. But they've got the potential to go on and win the American Conference, beat Central Florida, their nemesis from a year ago, and put themselves in a New Year's Six bowl game. That would be a great goal for them. And obviously, we've talked a lot about, Luke Fickell was the coach for Ohio State in 2011, was an assistant coach before that and after that, worked for Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. So he's in two pretty good coaching trees. And he'd love nothing more than to pull this off, because I don't think he envisions being at Cincinnati forever, although it's a great school and a great community for him to raise his kids, he and his wife to raise their kids. But I think he's upwardly mobile after winning 11 games last year, as a thought that I should be coaching at a Power 5 conference school, and places like Tennessee and Florida State are going to be looking for coaches, it seems. Maybe some others, hard to say. But I think Fickle, with another good year at Cincinnati, possibly a conference championship, could be a thick contender for something like that. And you got the players at Cincinnati. You got kids on that team from the, as they say, the tri-state area, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, who really, for the most part, were given the time of day by Ohio State. They got a couple of kids who transferred from Ohio State down there with Blue Smith, a wide receiver, and also Garen Prater, who was a walk-on from Cincinnati, Wyoming High School, I believe, who transferred down there as well to get a scholarship. So I don't know how much those guys are going to impact this game or if at all, but there's a chip on the shoulder of the players at Cincinnati as well. So they're going to play harder than they've ever played before, and this is their Super Bowl. They've beaten UCLA twice and Virginia Tech once in the last 13 months. So they've played with Power 5 schools, and now they get to play with one of the best of them.
Can I just jump in? Would you rather be at Cincinnati, Tennessee, or Florida State right now?
That's a great question. I think if you're going to pay me $5 million like they're playing those guys at Tennessee, Pruitt, and that clown Taggart at Florida State.
You sound like me, Steve. I go on a Florida State show, and that's what I've been trying to tell him for a while. I'm sorry. Keep
you're
going.
You're going to pay me that much money. I'll go there and go 3-9, just like everybody else does. So.
Yeah, I was going to I could live that sweet, sweet buyout life when it doesn't work out.
I mean, he's probably making 1.5 at Cincinnati as a guess. I doubt he makes a whole lot more than that. And they don't have the TV money in the American, obviously, that the SEC or the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12 have. So I think he has positioned himself very well with a good season in 2019 to put one on top of another to jump off and get a pretty good Power 5 job.
Yeah, you'd mentioned all the Ohio guys. I mean, I think I did a count, and it was more than 70 players from the state of Ohio who were either lightly recruited, under-recruited, or not recruited by Ohio State, who are going to come in spitting bullets, getting the opportunity to play against the team that more than likely they grew up rooting for. I mean, not every kid in the state of Ohio grows up rooting for Ohio State, but the vast majority of them do. And I mean, I think it'll be a really good game. I'm not going to get ahead of myself and get into my prediction at this point, but watching that UCLA game, I am going to sit there and say that Dorian Thompson-Robinson did everything he could to lose that game, and he was successful. Awful. with eight completions, doing a couple of Tate Forcier fumbles where he forced his own fumbles and whatnot. But don't take anything away from UC. They're a salty bunch. You gotta respect what Luke Fickle's done there. A lot of respect to Mark Freeman, former Ohio State player as well, who's led that defense. Ryan Day made a phone call when he was looking to put together staff, and Marcus said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to ride with what I got here. Cincinnati's going to come in, as an underdog, but it's not going to be for lack of heart.
For those of you who know Super Bowl lore, Dorian Thompson-Robinson did his best Garo Yepremian, where he tried to throw and batted it up in the air and so forth and so on. Claire, Cincinnati's coming to town.
Yeah, so I wanted to dovetail a little bit on what Kevin was saying about that, obviously UCLA turning the ball over, but it was a balance of UC taking away the ball and UCLA turning it over. This is a very aggressive defense, and you're not just seeing it with takeaways, but some of these packages and looks that they're really going to be bringing after Justin Fields. And kind of what Tony was saying too, we saw a very vanilla offense, but we saw a vanilla defense, and I don't necessarily think it's a terribly bad thing right away. I think one of the reasons it's vanilla, obviously, is because they didn't want to show their hand to Cincinnati and kind of going forward, but we also have to remember that Justin Fields has only been in the system for 8 months, and he's only going to, Ryan Day talked about only have a certain set of plays that they kind of have a starter pack that they know they definitely want to run, and they adjust as the game goes forward. My main concern about Ohio State and Cincinnati is quarters 2 through 4, watching Ohio State let off the gas a little bit. When I saw UC play 4 quarters against UCLA. That was a boxing match of a game. And they certainly didn't give up even when it looked like they could have. So that's definitely what I'm looking for is Ohio State protecting the football, clock management. We definitely need to see Ohio State kind of picking up some of this aggressive UC defense.
If I was a decent host, I probably would have led off with that point instead of jumping ahead to the Cincinnati game and then going back to the Florida Atlantic game. But my goodness, they were throwing the ball against air in the first quarter. It looked like 7-on-7 drills. Guys were wide open. Justin Fields is just basically setting up shop in the pocket. The offensive line was pass protecting. The running plays looked beautiful. Like they were like both seeing the offensive line carve out the nice hole, and then J.K. was getting into the secondary, making nice moves. It looked like 2017 all over again. And from a running standpoint, and they just looked amazing for 4 drives, and then just all shut down.
Well, it certainly didn't help, too, with the missed late hit and the maybe OPI that stalled an Ohio State drive. They would have had the ball inside the FAU 10. I think that would have changed the narrative a lot if that wouldn't have happened. But, the whistle goes both ways, and you can't really make excuses for that. But, I think that really ended up being kind of a turning point that fed into the narrative that they absolutely couldn't find the accelerator for a quarter and a half until they got, part of the way through the third.
And what I like this week is Justin Fields learned and said that it's his job to make sure that they don't go into that lull again. And that's not something that he would necessarily know as a true sophomore in his first start, being in Columbus for 9 months now. But now he understands that as the quarterback, even if you're not a captain, you are a leader. You are the leader of the offense. You have to keep them going. You have to keep them motivated. You have to keep the pedal down, as we've said. And now he knows that, and we'll see how that parlays down the road, how it affects his play on Saturday, how it affects the entire offense. But it's good to learn those lessons in a win rather than learning them in a loss.
Yeah.
And we'll see how he operates on Saturday. I think that's maybe what I'm looking most forward to is seeing him against not air, seeing him up against a defense that held UCLA to 60 yards rushing in that neighborhood, and hits the quarterback, hits the running backs, and is a physical group. And he said on Tuesday that he hasn't ever been this sore, and the trainers asked him where he was sore, and he said everywhere. So this is a guy who is still getting into, I wouldn't say game shape, but game shape in terms of getting hit and getting up. But give him credit for standing in a pocket when he did. He saw some hits coming, and he still delivered. His receivers need to bail him out better than they did last week when Chris Olave dropped one when he took it on the chin from a blitz by a linebacker. But it's as Urban Meyer would say, the quarterback is a product of those around him, and we'll still see what Ohio State has around him. J.K. needs to step it up. The running backs need to step it up, and we've only seen a fraction of what the receivers can do. And I've been one of the people talking all off season about Jalen Gill, a redshirt freshman H-back. We didn't really see him. Garrett Wilson played, Jalen Gill played, but they didn't really do much with the ball. So there's still a lot more to see of this offense and the defense. And we're going to see as much as they need to show us on Saturday.
Yeah, we didn't see. I mean, KJ Hill is such a focal point in the offense. He had 3 catches for 31 yards. Garrett Wilson, the only play he was really involved in that I remember was that backward pass that kind of was a little wonky that ended up resulting in a turnover. Something else that happened during the slow times for the Buckeyes. We didn't see a lot of these the players that we expected there. So it was an offense for as powerful as it came out in those first 4 drives, scoring 28 points in 9 minutes, something along those lines. I mean, the first time that Ohio State had scored 28 and a quarter since I think it was like the 2017 season. I mean, they've had some 21s out there, but they don't do 28 all that often. I'm really looking forward to see what they're going to do against an offense or a defense that's going to probably capture their attention a little bit more, and there's going to be a less likelihood that that they're going to think, wow, this is just happening too easy, is they're going to have to earn everything.
And I think on top of that, Kevin, we may see a little more of Jeremy Ruckert because of that. I'm sure everyone that's, a 3 yards in a cloud of dust fan, a football fan, was excited to see more plays out of a tight end, but definitely was excited to see him somewhat be like a target. It seemed like he had some chemistry with Fields. It was also a very clean game, especially in that first quarter. It was nice to see a team that seemed mentally disciplined. You kind of question leadership when, they let off the gas and things start to get soft after a lead. But discipline was definitely there in that first quarter. In the second quarter, it was definitely a cleaner game as far as penalty goes.
All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. This is what we do each and every Wednesday night, is talk up the Buckeyes at 9:00 Eastern time with what I consider, it doesn't matter what I consider, just flat out is the best panel on Buckeye football talk that you will find anywhere. And I just fill in the blanks. So the filling in the blanks right now is saying I went 16-11 against the spread. I'm not bragging about that. It's 59%. It's good enough to make some money. 16-11. If Hunter Johnson could hold on to the football in the last 12 seconds of the game, not get blindsided for a touchdown for Stanford, it would have been better than that. And if Alabama didn't score with like 10 seconds left, it would have been better than, a lot of bad beats against me this past week. I'm not bitter. All right. But you get my picks down in the description section below. If you grab the link, Voice of College Football Community, and also next to the hashtag Sam Strong, you grab that link and you go to betnow.eu and you get 100%. They've raised it from 50 to 100% added to your account. So if you throw in 50, you get 100, 100, you get 200, and then you can make the predictions yourself or rely on me or do whatever you'd like. All right. We also have an Amazon link as well. All right. So the defense, though, I thought the defense, despite giving up some points in the second half, came out and took charge, was aggressive, was in the backfield, didn't miss tackles, was breaking up passes, just all over the FAU quarterback, Robeson. And for me, the defensive effort, when it mattered, to me was more impressive than what the offensive did on that side of the ball. Kevin, your thoughts about that? I'll get us started with Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could sit there and just go into the secondary. Jeffrey Okudah showing a lot of reason why he's being projected as a potential first-round draft pick for the Buckeyes in the 2020 draft. But I mean, I think it really starts with what Chase Young was able to do. That one-handed sack that he had. I mean, he was credited with 1.5 sacks. Some people could make an argument that he probably should have had another half sack in there somewhere along the way. Jayshon Cornell, who was slotted to be playing 3-tech with the injuries to Tyreek Smith and Tyler Friday and Jonathan Cooper, was playing out on the edge. I mean, we talked to him tonight, and he talked about being at 285 pounds. Larry Johnson said that he does want to get him back into 3-tech once the depth is back there. But, he was doing a really good job here in his final year with the Buckeyes out on the edge. So, we saw a lot of things coming out of the defense that were very positive, especially since they were running relatively a pretty vanilla system. So, just imagine once they start dropping some more wrinkles in, but let's not overcomplicate things.
Right.
Because we saw what happened when they did that last season.
I agree, Kevin. We saw a lot of, back to basics, fundamentals. Guys were in position. Again, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite topics is discipline. We saw a very disciplined defense, not seeing a bunch of guys out of position and really sticking with tackles. And again, it's Florida Atlantic, but it's the fundamentals that weren't there at the beginning of the season last year playing a similar opponent.
I like the defense as a whole. I think the first team with Sean Wade thrown in there as kind of the third corner, those first 11 to 14 guys were awe-inspiring. As I like to say, they slammed Florida Atlantic's head, like they slammed their head in the car door or something. 32 plays, minus 14 yards total offense in the first half. And then the second half, they were playing backups on the very first series of the second half. Several guys who shall go remain nameless because they gave up plays. And one pass play in particular, a roughing the passer penalty, and just other breakdowns. They threw a little lob pass that had a couple of the young linebackers out of position, and it went for 30 yards to set up another score. So little dinks and little dunks, and they took what Ohio State gave them. The Buckeyes played off the Florida Atlantic receivers in the second half to keep everything in front of them for the most part, and Florida Atlantic netted 18 points in the second half and actually looked like a real football team. The comment, this is probably the 8th different place I've made it, but it's still, I think, very humorous nonetheless, is that Florida Atlantic quit in this game in reverse. They quit at the beginning and didn't even try, is my feeling, in the first half. Figured, well, let's just try and wear down Ohio State's fist with our chin. And then I think when their coaches got into them a little bit at halftime and added a couple wrinkles, obviously, they played much, much better in the second half and looked like an actual college football team in the second half. So add it all together, 45-21. It could have been worse. I don't think it could have been any closer. I mean, that was about as much as Florida Atlantic was going to muster against Ohio State. Even the second team defense got some stops. But, yeah, it could have been much worse. It could have been in the 50s to 21, had everything kind of gone according to Hoyle.
Yeah, defensively, what I liked is you still had 4 linebackers playing. There was a time where Pete Warner even drifted back to a deep safety on a third down, and Baron Browning played well, put all these different pieces together, and it was like Jeff Hafley has said he wants this defense to be plug and play. And even Jayshon Cornell said today that everybody knows the entire defense, and somebody asked him, does that mean he could play safety? And he said, well, he knows it, but he couldn't necessarily play it as a 285-pound defensive tackle. And Cornell also said that he's back at defensive tackle right now, which means that Tyreek Smith, Tyler Friday are probably good to go. They were game time decisions last week, and I don't believe either of them played, which is why Cornell was moved to defensive end. So he is back at defensive tackle now. I guess we'll see on Saturday if he stays there. But I think they need to be as strong in the middle as they can be with what Cincinnati's going to do with the way they run the ball, with the way they try to run the ball. It's not always pretty. And Michael Warren is a tough runner. They've talked about him quite a bit. He didn't I don't think necessarily Cincinnati had a great day on the ground, but they keep trying. They keep, it's like Mark D'Antonio's offense. If you get 3 yards of carry, that's fine. It takes 40 carries. That means you've controlled the clock. You've kept the opponent off the field. And in this game, that would be a win for Luke Fickell, is to keep Ohio State's offense off the field. Ohio State's defense, though, if they played like they did early in that game, or actually in the whole first half, if they get a bunch of 3-and-outs, then you're going to see where they maybe get 14 points on the board and Cincinnati's playing catch-up right away.
People in the live chat are really fascinated with Master Teague, who got 12 carries in the game. Really happy with what he did. We talked backup running back last week, and the way it played out was that he got some looks. Again, 12 carries for Master Teague. 8 carries. My apologies. 8 carries for 49. Marcus Crowley, 4 for 27. Demario McCall caught a pass and carried it twice. Did you guys get enough looks at those guys to have any kind of an evaluation?
I think everybody wants to see more of Master Teague, but a lot of it is coming up against a defense that knows the game is over. And there's this interesting thing going around I'm seeing with a lot of Ohio State fans where they're almost turning. Some of them have already turned on J.K. Dobbins, where they are ready to see somebody else. They don't want to see another year like last year from J.K. Dobbins. And I don't think they saw anything in that first game that makes them think that he's going back to the 2017 form. Now, we would say this was, again, a simplified vanilla version of what Ohio State will be doing in the future on offense and probably on Saturday on offense. But it's time for JK to be more than a 4.4, 4.3, 4.7 yard per carry guy. That's not good enough at Ohio State. And if that's Master Teague, if it's Marcus Crowley, if it's Demario McCall, they need to be, they need to actually be pushing him. And maybe that's up to Tony Alford to see that it happens. And that's why you're seeing a lot of people want to see Master Teague, because they're tired of the the 4 yards, the 3 yards, the 2 yards, and no home runs. And this was just one game, and he still rushed for 91 yards. J.K. Dobbins did. So I think this game is very important for him. If he busts out 120, then people are back on his side. If it's 12 carries for 40 yards, it's gonna get louder and louder for him.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the first half, I mean, really the first quarter, some of the runs he had, he showed patience, but he also showed some decisiveness out there. I mean, yeah, when the offense kind of bogged down and it looked like it was, just a lot of read options, Dobbins A gap for one, Dobbins A gap, no gain, Dobbins A gap again and again and again. That, I think that's where the frustration is. But I think that a lot of that too it's a whole team situation there. I mean, They were tinkering with the offensive line. They didn't necessarily have the 5 guys in that had started the game. They made some quick substitutions to be able to be able to cycle through that. So I get it, but I think that you're always going to have, regardless of what fan base you're talking about, that always want, there's a reason why Let's Make a Deal was such a popular game show. People could have, $2,000 in cash in their hand, but they're going to take the chance of getting the zonk behind curtain number 2 just because they want to see what they haven't seen.
Yeah, JK was rolling after 8 carries with 43, Claire.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say some of the intangibles you're seeing out of JK against FAU were, yards after contact. We saw him, I definitely agree with Kevin as far as him looking more patient, more decisive, running behind these blockers, but really watching him display some toughness, falling forward. He definitely seemed like he's just a step away from a home run. So I don't think that I'm not disappointed in J.K. Dobbins, but I know exactly what Tony's talking about. Fans just want these, 6, 7, 8 yards per carry, and it's just not always realistic. I think it's going to be there for J.K. this season, and he's the kind of player that's going to work until he gets it.
I think one thing that people don't think about is that they did substitute on the offensive line. And when you do that, it does impact your chemistry and your cohesion a little bit. So I think you think about what you're looking at there. If you put in a Nicholas Petit-Frere or a Harry Miller or, one of the backups, there could be some missed assignments that come in there. And that's nothing against those guys. It's just the nature of being an 18-year-old guy, 19-year-old guy going in there and going up against older, stronger players. So, I think that they got something in the order of 70 guys into this game, which is probably almost everybody who figures to play who was healthy. There may be a true freshman or 2 that may still play that we haven't seen yet. I think my unofficial count was 6 or 7 of them got in the game, and that is what makes a game like the one they just played so important, that you look beyond the score or any of the factors or whatever. You say, my goodness, Zach Harrison probably played 20 plays or more as a true freshman in his first game in the uniform. And, he and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I'm bringing up defensive guys in particular, they have that athletic look that they are going to be stars one day. They're the future Chase Young, but they're where Chase Young was 2 years ago at this time, a young kid running around out there, a little underweight, and, trying to figure out where the ball's going and those kind of things, and not maybe making that impact play just yet. But that was what was fun about this game, is you got to see so many guys between the redshirt freshmen and the true freshmen who got their first taste of being on the field for Ohio State, and are guys that are going to be keepers for years to come.
I know that the scheduling doesn't work like this in regards to scheduling teams for this purpose, but Cincinnati seems to be a good opponent that shouldn't. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a really close game in the fourth quarter, but they shouldn't seriously down to the wire test Ohio State. But it's certainly a quality football team. It's probably a top 40 team in the nation, something in that range that's going to be enough resistance to get a good read on these guys.
Would you be surprised if Desmond Howard picked Cincinnati this weekend?
Just as
That
long as
is my upset pick.
as long as he doesn't choke him, we're
Yeah.
all good.
Is that a yes?
Oh,
I don't listen to what he says.
yeah.
But I'm just saying, Mark,
Don't get me fired.
it is one of those games where you could see some people taking
Right.
Cincinnati as the upset pick this week.
Well, 17-point spread, and I think that there are a lot of people who think it should even be closer than that. I guess it opened at 17 and is now around 16, so it's come down just a little bit. But I think they set it so high to get people to put money on the Cincinnati side. Otherwise, if it had started at 11 or 12, people would have bet the heck out of it for Ohio State, and a 14-point spread would cover that pretty easily. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the sweet spot is going to be somewhere in that range, and could come down to the fourth quarter just in terms of that number. But I would agree. I look for a close game through two periods, and then Ohio State, with its depth, its size, its speed, all those advantages that it has built in to kind of wear on Cincinnati. It's going to be an 80-degree day, it sounds like, at the shoe. So conditioning will come into factor, and depth as well. And Ohio State should have both those, well, at least the depth in spades over Cincinnati.
So we've seen roughly 5 double-digit underdogs win just in week 1. Hawaii beat Arizona, 11-point underdog. Purdue went down as an 11-point favorite, up 17 at half. Couldn't believe that happened. I certainly could believe it before the game, but once they seized control, or seemingly had control, Missouri from the SEC goes up to Wyoming as a 17-point favorite. They lose. South Carolina as a 12-point favorite loses to North Carolina, and most embarrassingly, Tennessee loses not just to a group of 5 team, a 2-10 group of 5 team, and they were down 2 scores with about 5 minutes left, losing as a 26-point favorite. So none of those, despite those being substantial upsets, none of those teams were the caliber of Ohio State. Now, you could say on the flip side, probably none of those teams the caliber of Cincinnati, trying to pull off the upset, but certainly none of those teams anywhere close to Ohio State as a favorite.
But there is also a little bit of a difference in terms of what this means for Cincinnati, what it means for the players, what it means for the coach. So there's a little bit of extra there. So I don't know, maybe instead of 17, it's more like 14, something of that nature, where there's some points there for being a bunch of guys who didn't get offered from Ohio State and have that chip on their shoulder. So we'll see whose chip is most important. Ohio State has one. Cincinnati has one. I don't think you can play football without one. I think it's part of the rules. It's like shoulder pads, cleats, chip, and then you go from there. But this is a little bit different than those in terms of, yes, Cincinnati's probably better, but I think this would mean more to Cincinnati because even who cares if you beat Tennessee?
Lose. I mean, they're going to have all this emotional stuff about not being offered, blah, 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 blah. Haven't beat Ohio State since 1897. The last 11 matchups have all gone Ohio State's way. So, I think some of that stuff, from just a psychological standpoint, is going to weigh on Cincinnati as well. So they may not be able to play as free and clear as a Georgia State or as a Wyoming or somebody along those lines. There's certainly going to be something there. They're going to feel a good amount of pressure, even if Desmond Howard and people within like a 2-mile square block area of Cincinnati are the only ones who believe that the Bearcats can win this one. They're going to feel some pressure.
I wonder if a guy like Justin Fields being in that locker room catches that dynamic to this game at all. If that gets to him at any point in regards to, I'm coming in from Georgia, but these guys care about this. Oh, and that's the little brother, and they feel slighted. And if any of that's talked about, and some of his teammates, well, I played with that guy and I played against that guy. And do you have any of that?
I think they better be talking X's and O's over any of that. And the emotional stuff is fun for the fans to talk about, and it's fun fodder for us to talk about, but they're going to be talking X's and O's, and maybe they'll be part of an impassioned speech before the game, but Ohio State has just as much to lose. I remember watching that first quarter thinking Ryan Day is sending all of college football a nation, and it is going to be his mission if they want to make it to the college football playoff, is to send a message, and that message is going to have to be domination through this schedule. They don't have a choice. This is not the kind of schedule they can squeak by like a 2014 against Cincinnati. They have to make this happen and make it be loud and clear.
You know, we've got some talk in the live chat concerning the wide receiver position. And again, it was difficult to get a read because there was no coverage in the first quarter. And then there was suddenly defense that showed up, and Justin Fields had to run around and didn't get a look downfield after 4 drives for some reason. And Steve certainly addressed that to a certain extent. But we've got talk about wide receivers, Olave being oppressive, maybe Austin Mack not being as good. I don't know if you guys, I'm going to serve it up, not just the wide receiver position, but we've talked about these guys at length, and you guys write about them every day in regards to the player evaluation and some of these guys. Now, we're talking, when I say Olave and Mack, 2 guys that we know full well what they're capable of doing. They've played on the big stage many times, especially Mack. But anybody else that you got a chance to see that stood out one way or the other across the board?
For me, Benjamin Victor with the run after catch was impressive. That's not really what he's known for. We saw the Penn State game last year where he did that. But if he can do more of that, where he gets, an 8-yard, 9-yard out or a curl and then makes the guy miss and then tears off for another 30 yards, that would be great, because they're going to need stuff like that with Paris Campbell gone, Johnny Dixon gone, Terry McLaurin gone. They took a big hit in terms of speed and big plays, and right now we're waiting to see who is that. And I don't, Benjamin Victor's probably a 4.65 guy, so that he's not going to go to the combine and do a Terry McLaurin or a Paris Campbell. So who are those guys? Chris Olave's fast. We'll see that. I want to see more of it. But in terms of him being needing to be on the field more than Austin Mack, I mean, that's just not how it works at Ohio State. It's 2 guys sharing the role because they go up tempo. So you can't have one guy taking 80% of the snaps because he'll be dead in the fourth quarter, and they want everybody to be fresh on every single snap. So you're gonna be sharing, and you'll have Austin Mack with, right now Garrett Wilson was out there quite a bit as the other guy, as the other X, and we're all waiting to see what we know he is, and it's a little bit of to say that of a true freshman, it's presumptuous, but he's not the normal true freshman. But again, when it happens, everybody in the press box, everybody watching at home, Buckeye fans will be like, yep, it's about time. Game 2 happens. It's about time, because we've been waiting for that. We've seen it. We know what he's capable of. For me, I want to see him do it. And again, like I said, Jalen Gill has all the talent in the world, just needs some opportunities. But those opportunities aren't as prevalent as long as Ohio State is running Jeremy Ruckert out there, as Claire said, with that 2 tight end set, because that 2 tight end set takes reps away from that second H-back. So there aren't as many reps there as there were last year for that position. Last year you had Paris Campbell get 90 catches, KJ Hill get 70. That's 160 between 2 guys at one position. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this year with as many 2 tight end sets as they're going to play.
Let's not forget the 3 tight end set too that they ran deep on the near the goal line, where the play I think was actually supposed. I think Farrell was the first look, but the second Ruckert touchdown, he was like the second option there. I think a player I'm really looking forward to seeing, who probably is going to be more of a 2020 player. Everybody's talked about Garrett Wilson as a true freshman, but I'm looking forward to seeing Jameson Williams when he gets his opportunity, because he's an electric type of player as well. I mean, he's somebody who needs to probably put in a little extra time with Coach Mick in terms of getting a little bit more solid. But I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be a player that's going to get too rocked up. But I think that he's somebody that could, in his 4 games before they have to make a decision, yes or no on a red shirt, I think we could see him make a big play or two, given opportunity.
I think Mac is going to be okay. He just missed a week or two of the preseason because of a hamstring injury. May take him another week or two to get back into the full flow and get a full complement of reps. But Olave certainly has picked up the slack there, and he's fabulous. So they go about 4 or 5 deep right now at wide receiver. It hurts them that C.J. Saunders is out. He could help them a little bit. Kind of along the lines I talked about with Zach Harrison and Baptiste, that Jamison Williams and Garrett Wilson were out there running around quite a bit, but probably hyperventilating a little bit with how hot and humid it was, and in the hitting that was going on that field. So you're no longer the biggest, strongest, fastest guy on the field at your position. You're now just one of 20 special athletes that are sharing time on that field. So it does take the young guys a little bit of time to adapt.
Got all sorts of predictions on the line here. We've got 2 Buckeyes fans. I assume they're Buckeyes fans, both predicting Ohio State to score 60 plus. Anthony Williams, 64-14 over Cincinnati. Wow. I saw one Cincinnati prediction, one win for the Bearcats. And that brings us to, if everybody's prepared for this, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to Tony, I saw one of those look at the sky like,
well, Kevin was talking about Jamison Williams.
Yep.
And on my podcast, the Buckeye Weekly podcast, which is available at all of your various outlets, I call Jamison Williams Ted Ginn Jr. And if you go look at his high school film, you'll see why. So after this, or after the Michigan show after this, stay on YouTube and check out Jamison Williams high school highlights. You'll see why. And like Kevin said, he's maybe a year away, but when he hits, he's going to be, we talk about where does that speed come from? I believe he's a 10-5 guy, so it'll be right there.
So also, I would like for all of you just to let everyone know where they can find you, what you're working on this week, what your focus is on, because you guys come on here and just do an outstanding job supporting my channel. And I appreciate all of you. Obviously, I found all of you from watching, talking Ohio State football, reading your work, and being impressed with what you do on a regular basis. So we'll start with you, Kevin.
Good. I get to pick before Gerd too. Am I putting my prediction in here as well?
Your prediction. We also want to know what you're working on and where people can find you.
I just want to pick before Gerd because I want to make him angry again.
If you take my score this week again, dude,
I can assure you, because I think I'm going off the reservation a little bit here with where my pick's going to be. But obviously, I'm at Buckeye Grove, part of the Rivals Network. Tomorrow we'll be releasing our Tale of the Tape, where we kind of do a little bit of a deep dive in Ohio State's opponent. It's always a little bit more difficult early in the season because you don't have as many data points to go through. But 2,000 words of my stream of consciousness, always a fan favorite type of piece. As for the Ohio State game, I have mad respect for what Cincinnati is able to do. I just don't see this necessarily being a close game. I think that what Cincinnati does well is what Ohio State traditionally, last year being an outlier, is what Ohio State traditionally is good at stopping. I think that we've seen these premier backs go against Ohio State. We've seen Ohio State shut down these premier backs. Last year, we kind of saw some guys that I've never heard of for Oregon State and some other places run rampant all over them. But I think that we're going back more toward what Ohio State traditionally is. I think we could see a little bit of a shootout going on for the first quarter, but Ohio State's just going to be too deep. Let's remember Cincinnati, the left side of their offensive line, redshirt freshman, sophomore, the center is a sophomore. They're going to attack that side of the line. They're going to have the quarterback Ritter running, I think, a lot in this game. And I like Ohio State to win this one going away 41-13.
So the 2 most recent examples of that, Kevin, prior to 2018 was Jonathan Taylor en route to a tremendous season for Wisconsin. I believe his line, I'm guesstimating 15 carries for 41 in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. And then they shut down Stephen Carr, and Ronald Jones headed to the NFL in the Cotton Bowl. So yes, that defensive front has been dominant. And when you're going to run the football, regardless of the speed and the power of these backs that have gone up against Ohio State in recent years, it usually is not a formula for success. What was your score there again, Kevin?
41-13.
41-13. What say you, Claire?
Can we also remind everyone who was closest last week? Was it me? I think it was
Okay,
me.
how are we going to judge this? Are we going to like take total
Steve
points?
said it was me.
She was closest on the margin.
Okay, closest
we
on the
go.
margin. We'll do that every week. So,
There we go.
closest on the
Buckeyes,
margin.
although
Claire
I said
gets
they
week
would-
1 honors.
I said they would cover and they didn't cover, so I'll get a half a point taken away from me on that. I am actually the newest contributor to Buckeye Beat Report, so my girl Taylor Ashbrook and I are starting up some fun podcast stuff. I'll be writing and contributing there as well, and you can find me on Twitter at Buckeye Claire. Yeah, I think I'm going to go a little more conservatively than Kevin. And say 32-17. I just think that the Cincinnati defense is going to be really aggressive, and it's going to give the new-ish Buckeye offense maybe not quite as much freedom as they had against FAU in that first quarter. But I think it's going to be really important for Ohio State to start fast and strong, just like they did the week before. But they've got to keep the foot on the throat of the Bearcats. That's going to be one of the most important things going forward for a victory against Cincinnati.
So, Steve, is this a forte of yours, predicting football games? Are you pretty good at this?
Oh, I don't know. My first week, I was like 19-14 against the spread, and straight up, I was like 29-4, something like that. And, you know, you don't see a lot of point spread favorites lose the game outright in college football. I mean, it happens, but and you laid out some of the bigger upsets that we've had through the first week or so. I proudly picked Boise State straight up to win, and that was after the game had been moved to Florida State. I even got that right, so I am proud of that one. Last week, I think I had 49-14 or something like that, so I was off just as everybody else was on the spread. But I look at Cincinnati, and maybe I'm different than Kevin. I see a team that I mean, they play so hard. They are very physical. They do not have necessarily the size across the board that Ohio State has, and that's where Ohio State may have the advantage. But they've got some quickness, and they're going to scheme some things certainly that are going to look funny, I think, for Justin Fields when he gets to the line of scrimmage at times. And we're going to find out how quickly the coaching staff, as constituted now, can make adjustments. It took them a while to adjust in the Florida Atlantic game to where they could get back to attacking and those kind of things. So they can't afford those kind of lulls. I'm going to say 34-20, a close game for a half, but the Buckeyes, with their size and their depth, lean on Cincinnati in the end and pull away and win it 34-20 is my pick.
There's not a lot of scores left.
Every week.
You don't. Okay, I'm not going to comment. I was going to say something, but whatever scores on your mind, Tony.
Well, and really, I didn't have a score in my mind until about 5 minutes ago. Kevin went with 41-13. I might go, I think 34-13 sounds good,
That's
but
close.
honestly, I'm going to go with 31-13. Maybe a missed field goal in there keeps them at 31. You know, I like what Ohio State's doing on defense after one game, you know, that big sample that we have. But they're going to be chasing Desmond Ridder around. He's mobile, but I think Ohio State has linebackers who are just as fast as he is, if not faster, like Baron Browning and those guys chasing him around. And if the secondary is as good as Jeff Hafley believes they are, as Ryan Day believes they are, then we saw some really good discipline from them last week on that throwback to the quarterback when they had two guys double covering, you know, they're double covering the one receiver on the throwback, the flea flicker. So this is a disciplined group so far, and that's kind of what they're going to hang their hat on, is being smart, being simple, being disciplined, and just doing their jobs. And so I think I'll go 31-13. Yeah, that's good enough. I don't need to like underbid noon by one score because the overbidding last week did not help me.
Good stuff. That's all we expect from these four when they join us each and every week for Ohio State Buckeyes Live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And again, with nearing 100 on the line at one point, we appreciate the increase in viewership and a few thousand once all is said and done. Please join Kevin Noon at Buckeye Grove, Steve Hellwagon, of course, from Bucknuts. Claire, one more time. This
Buckeye
is
Beat
Buckeye
Report.
Beat Report, where we can find you.
Yes, officially.
Exceptional. I will check that out. And Tony Gerdeman, of course, from the Ozone. I'm merely Mark Rogers from MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. And you can all groan after I say that. But as an extra add bonus tonight, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, we are talking Michigan football. Yes, we are. So we're 5 minutes away from talking Michigan and their claim as the Big Ten favorite.
What do you think about my claim that Zach Charbonnet is Anthony Thomas 2.0?
Okay, I'll buy it.
Mark, also, we have beef because I'm sure, like everyone else on this panel, I watch Mark Rogers TV, including a promo where I thought you were genuinely upset and apologizing to your audience for your pick. And now you've likened yourself to Christopher Columbus and inventing the wheel.
Yes.
We have you going. So if you're not a Mark Rogers TV fan and you haven't watched what I'm talking about, you absolutely need to. Mark, you deserve an Oscar.
Well, thank you so much for the plug there. That's a bit of a tease there. So I release my top 25 each and every Monday during the college football season, and I was ridiculed. Even though I explained the approach, the philosophy, still just raked over the coals. But I know my mission. I know my task. I still deliver it. I don't care. I'm not changing. We are actually rating teams based on what the performance was on the field, not the preconceived notion prior to playing games. So it looks a little odd in week 1 and then a little less odd in week 2, and it flushes itself out. So when Wyoming beats Missouri, yes, I'm going to rank Wyoming. Am I predicting that they're going to finish as the 17th best team in the country? No, it's not a prediction. It is a ranking based on one game, and they earned a ranking with a win over Missouri. That's one example right there. And then, unfortunately, I came to the realization of the error of my ways. I was very remorseful, and so please check out the video.
No.
Claire has encouraged you to check out my reaction to your reaction to my top 25.
Mark, do you do your own rankings or do you have an SID do them for you?
Yes. Exactly. There it is from Tony Gerdeman. We can always expect a little zing from Tony, which is well done. All right, everyone. It's a never disappointment bringing you four on. We appreciate it so much. And we will see all of you again, hopefully next Wednesday night. Enjoy the game. High noon at Ohio Stadium at the Shoe against UC.
Go Army.
Thanks, everyone.